I was discriminated against my entire life because of my golden child sister. No matter what I did, my parents always treated her like she was royalty and treated me like I was just a burden. From the moment we were kids, the favoritism was obvious. If she accused me of something, even if it was ridiculous, my parents believed her and punished me. But if I accused her, even with undeniable proof, they found a way to protect her, scold me, and give her the lightest punishment possible. Even something as small as birthdays was never about me. My birthday cake would always be her favorite flavor. My parents would pretend not to know that I hated it, but I knew they did. Every trip, every celebration, every moment somehow revolved around her wants and her needs. She always got more gifts than me. She was given more freedom, and she was praised endlessly while I was constantly reminded of my flaws. At first, when we were little, my sister mostly ignored me. She had her own world and didn't bother much. But when we became teenagers, everything changed for the worse. She ended up with no friends, and her behavior became worse than ever. I never knew if her friends moved away or if they just ditched her because she was mean, but the reality was clear. She was miserable and bitter, and I became her new target. My parents, of course, never admitted this. To them, she was still perfect. They would brag about her smallest achievements, but when it came to her failures or her flaws, they never spoke about it. With me, it was the complete opposite. They would highlight every little mistake I made, laugh about it, and use it as teasing material. At school, I was fairly popular and had friends who cared about me. That made my sister furious. She turned me from just an occasional punching bag into someone she needed to constantly tear down. She accused me of everything imaginable. If one of my friends misbehaved, she exaggerated it to my parents, and they would stop me from hanging out with them. I was often told things like, "They are not good people, your sister said so," or "Why are you always trying to leave us? Why can't you be like your sister and enjoy family time?" It was suffocating. My parents were slowly isolating me just because my sister couldn't stand to see me happy. The only thing that saved me from complete loneliness was my extended family. Most of them lived in the same hometown, and I got along with my cousins, even if some of them were older or younger. They treated me like I mattered, and it gave me a small escape from my miserable home life. One time, during a family gathering, my cousins invited me to go somewhere fun. I sadly told them that I wasn't allowed to go anywhere. When they asked why, my kid self bluntly answered, "Because I'm not allowed to have friends since my sister doesn't have any." Those words got back to the adults, and I later learned that my extended family tore my parents apart for it. Of course, when we got home, my parents scolded me for lying and grounded me for a month. But strangely enough, after that incident, they gave me a little more freedom. So even though I was punished, it felt worth it. My sister eventually demanded to switch schools. I think the humiliation of our extended family finding out she had no friends was too much for her. My parents, as always, gave her what she wanted. They spent more money sending her to a different school that was further away. She eventually made friends there, but she never stopped tormenting me. If anything, it got worse. She was furious that I had exposed her secret to the family, and she never forgave me for it. Her friends would come over and bully me in my own home, and my parents would dismiss it as light teasing. I never dared to invite any of my friends over because it always ended in disaster. Either my parents were terrible hosts, or my sister accused my friends of stealing something, and of course, my parents always believed her. Despite all of this, I managed to maintain a close bond with my cousins. They were my only real escape. They made me feel normal, and I cherished every moment I had with them. But at home, things only grew more toxic. When I got my first boyfriend, I tried to keep him away from my house. But my parents insisted that I bring him over. One day, when we were separated in the house, he came running to me, looking upset. He told me that my sister was trying to flirt with him. She had come over in revealing clothes, batting her eyelashes, and trying to convince him that I was bad and she was better. My boyfriend was annoyed and uncomfortable, so he came straight to me. Of course, when my sister told my parents about the incident, her version was completely different. She claimed that my boyfriend had tried to flirt with her, but she refused because she could never do that to her sister. And who did my parents believe? Her. Always her. They accused me of being irresponsible and told me that my boyfriend was no good. I tried to fight back and defend him, but they shut me down. Eventually, the relationship ended because the pressure was too much. And this was only the beginning of many failed relationships caused by my sister's interference. After my first relationship ended, I thought maybe things would calm down. But I was wrong. My sister was relentless, and my parents never stopped enabling her. Every time I tried to move forward with my life, she found a way to drag me back down. When I started dating again, I was more careful. I didn't want to bring anyone near my house, but eventually my parents demanded to meet my new boyfriend. Against my better judgment, I agreed. The exact same thing happened again. My sister tried to flirt with him, he rejected her, and she twisted the story so it looked like he was the one chasing her. My parents immediately believed her version and once again painted me as the one with terrible judgment. I pointed out that this was the second time the exact same thing had happened, but they didn't want to hear it. Instead, they decided I was simply incapable of making good choices. They used it as proof that I couldn't be trusted. The relationship didn't survive, and I found myself more isolated than ever. At school, rumors started spreading about me. People began calling me names because I was willing to kiss and make out, but refused to get into serious relationships. Thankfully, these rumors didn't make it back to my parents or my sister. If they had, things would have been much worse. Meanwhile, my sister finally brought a boyfriend home. Unlike the way they treated mine, my parents adored him. They paraded him around, praised him endlessly, and compared him to me. They told me constantly how lucky my sister was to have found such a good man, and they made sure to remind me that I could never manage to do the same. But then, just like that, he disappeared. One day he was perfect and the best thing to ever happen to her, and the next day he was a horrible, conniving man who tricked my poor sister. My parents completely flipped the narrative. And yet again, I was reminded that the rules were different for her. She was never wrong, never to blame, always the victim. As we grew older, the differences in how we were treated became even more painful. She had more spending money than me, her curfews were better, and she was allowed to go wherever she wanted. I, on the other hand, was trapped. If I pointed out the unfairness, my parents had excuses ready. They said it was because she was older. But when I reached the same age, my curfews and restrictions didn't change. When I confronted them about their excuse, they denied ever saying it. Instead, they claimed I couldn't be trusted like she could. And they always used her lies about my boyfriends and friends as proof of my bad judgment. Eventually, it was time for my sister to graduate high school. She didn't have the best grades, but she was accepted into a college. It wasn't a prestigious school, and she didn't get a scholarship, but my parents made it sound like the greatest achievement in the world. They celebrated, bragged, and promised to pay for everything. I didn't care where she went. I was just relieved that she'd finally be away from me for a while. But even then, my relief was short-lived. She came home almost every weekend, and every time she did, something of mine would go missing or some drama would explode that somehow made my life worse. Around this time, my mom sat me down for a serious talk about my own future. She told me that since they were already paying for my sister's college, there was no money left for mine. According to her, it would be better if I got a job immediately after graduation and waited until my sister finished her studies to see if they could afford something for me. She even added that if I stayed at home after graduation, I would have to pay rent and contribute to the bills. I asked about student loans, and my mom shut that idea down too. She said that they cared about me too much to let me make such a bad decision. According to her, my judgment was too poor to decide on a school, so they would determine whether a college was worth my debt or not. I didn't argue. By then, I had no expectations from them. I had already prepared myself for this outcome. For years, I studied hard because I knew education was my only escape. My parents thought they were breaking me down, but all they did was fuel my determination. When graduation came, I worked hard and earned myself a full scholarship. It wasn't Ivy League or anything too fancy, but it was a good college, and it was fully paid for. I knew my parents would try to sabotage me if they could, so I announced my achievement on social media at the same time I told them. I even made sure to thank them in the post, just to make it harder for them to oppose me without looking bad to the extended family. At first, they pretended to be proud. They bragged a little, but I could already sense their disappointment. Eventually, my sister got to them, and they changed their tune. They began to warn me that maybe college wasn't right for me. They even said that since my sister was struggling in her program, I would surely fail too. But I didn't back down. For the first time in my life, I didn't let them control my decisions. I went to college, and it was the first time I truly felt free. College changed everything for me. For the first time in my life, I was away from my parents' control and my sister's constant cruelty. I felt like I could finally breathe. It wasn't easy, of course. I had to work hard to manage my scholarship, and money was always tight since my parents refused to help me in any way. But I didn't care. Freedom was worth every bit of the struggle. At first, I kept in touch with my family. I visited during holidays, called them occasionally, and tried to keep the peace. But I made sure to avoid bringing any boyfriends home. I had learned my lesson too many times. Every time a man came near my family, my sister tried to ruin it. This time, I wasn't going to give her that chance. My sister, meanwhile, was falling apart. She was struggling in her college courses, but my parents pretended everything was fine. They never admitted that she was failing, but I could tell. There were no more excited calls about her grades, no more bragging to relatives. Then one day, she dropped out completely. Of course, my parents spun the story. They said she decided college wasn't for her, and that she was too smart for that environment. The truth was obvious, she couldn't keep up. Instead of facing reality, they gave her a job at the same company where my mom worked. My mom pulled strings, got her hired, and presented it to me as something to be proud of. I wasn't surprised. That was always how things worked in my family. She failed, they excused it. I succeeded, they minimized it. Nothing ever changed. But something had changed for me. I had started building a new life. I had friends in college who actually liked me for who I was. I was studying something I cared about, and I felt like I had control over my future for once. And then, I met the man who would become my husband. He was everything I wasn't. Bold, confident, quick with comebacks. The kind of person who never let anyone walk all over him. Where I cried when I was angry, he fought back. Where I stayed quiet, he spoke loudly. At first, people couldn't understand how someone like him could end up with someone like me. But what they didn't see was how perfectly we balanced each other. He was protective, not in an overbearing way, but in the sense that he hated seeing anyone mistreat me. He was the kind of man who actually did the things other people only said they would do in unfair situations. And I loved that about him. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had someone on my side who would not only support me, but also fight for me. When we got serious and started talking about marriage, I was nervous. Not because I didn't want to marry him, but because I knew what introducing him to my family would mean. I tried to avoid it, but eventually, the pressure became too much. My parents demanded to meet him. I wanted to say no, to stand up for myself, but my old habit of giving in started to creep back. My husband, however, was thrilled. Not because he wanted to meet them, but because he wanted to expose them. He bought a small recorder, the kind that could be hidden in his pocket, and told me he was going to record everything they said. He wanted to prove once and for all how toxic they were, not just to me, but to everyone else. He went alone to meet them. I stayed behind, anxious and dreading what would happen. When he came back, he looked like he had just won the lottery. He was practically glowing. "Babe," he said, "you won't believe what they tried to pull. You won't believe the awful things they said. We can destroy them with this recording." I didn't even want to hear it at first. I was scared of how bad it could be. But he insisted on telling me, and when he did, I couldn't believe my ears. Instead of simply insulting him or questioning his intentions, my parents and my sister had come up with a plan. A plan so absurd, so outrageous, that even my husband had been stunned into silence for a moment. They told him they would pay for our wedding on one condition. My sister would walk down the aisle first, in a wedding dress, as if it were her own wedding. Their excuse? It wasn't right for a younger sister to marry before the older one. So my sister, they said, should at least get the experience of walking down the aisle, wearing a dress, having pictures taken, even cutting a cake at my wedding. When my husband told me this, I was speechless. I had spent my whole life being overshadowed by my sister, but this was beyond anything I could have imagined. Even on my wedding day, they wanted to make it about her. My husband grinned as he replayed the conversation for me. Can you believe it? They actually suggested this. They seriously think this is normal. I felt a wave of anger, but also relief. Because now, I had proof. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. They really were as manipulative and selfish as I always believed. And with my husband by my side, I wasn't going to let them ruin my wedding. As the years passed, the gap between me and my sister only grew wider. She always managed to turn every situation into a chance to humiliate me, and my parents only fueled her behavior by praising her every action while tearing me down for the smallest mistakes. When she started dating, My parents treated her boyfriends like royalty, showering them with attention and comparing them to me as if to remind me of my shortcomings. I could never bring anyone home because I knew she would twist the story and accuse them of something horrible, and of course, my parents would believe her. I had learned to survive by focusing on my studies and keeping close to my cousins who actually cared for me. By the time graduation was approaching, I thought maybe things would finally shift. My parents called me into the living room one evening, and I remember the heavy feeling in my chest because I already knew whatever they were about to say would not be in my favor. My mother smiled at me with that false sweetness and explained that since they were already paying for my sister's college, there was no money left for me. She said it would be better if I started working right after graduation, and maybe in the future, if my sister finished her studies, they would see if they could help me. I kept my face calm, but inside I felt crushed. I had worked so hard. I had good grades. I had done everything right, yet none of it mattered. I pointed out that I could apply for student loans, and my father quickly cut in saying that they cared too much to let me make such bad choices. He insisted they would decide if a college was worth me getting into debt. The irony was almost unbearable. They never once cared about my dreams, and now they claimed to care too much. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, but I was not defeated. I had prepared for this moment. I knew deep down they would never support me, so I had already applied for scholarships on my own. My grades had given me a chance, and when the letter came confirming my full scholarship to a respected college, I felt free for the first time in my life. I did not tell my parents right away. Instead, I shared it on social media, posting my acceptance letter and thanking my parents in the caption. I knew that once the family saw it, my parents could not deny me without exposing themselves. At first, they pretended to be proud, showing my post to relatives as if they had supported me all along. But within days, I could feel the shift. My sister must have gotten to them because their smiles vanished and their words changed. They asked if I was sure I wanted to go, saying if my sister was struggling in college, then surely I would fail even harder. They claimed I did not have the judgment or maturity, but I stood firm. For once, they could not stop me. College became my salvation. I finally breathed fresh air, away from their constant criticism. I studied, I made friends, I built a life. I still called my parents on holidays, but I no longer depended on them. I avoided bringing boyfriends home, keeping that part of my life away from my sister's toxic games. It was during this time that I met the man who would become my husband. He was everything I had never been allowed to be. Bold, outspoken, unafraid of confrontation. Where I hesitated, he acted. Where I swallowed my anger, he let his fury out without fear. He balanced me in ways I did not expect, pushing me to stand up for myself while still protecting me fiercely. People around us were shocked that someone like him would fall for me, the quiet girl with a broken family, but he never saw me as weak. He saw the strength it took to survive what I had endured. When we began to discuss marriage, we both agreed that the ceremony itself was not as important as the life we would build together. We wanted to save money for travel, for experiences, for freedom, but eventually we decided to host a wedding in my hometown so his scattered family could gather and so mine could not accuse me of excluding them. That decision set everything into motion. As soon as the engagement was announced, my parents insisted on meeting him. I dreaded it. I wanted to say no, to protect him from their poison, but part of me still struggled with the old habit of giving in. My husband was amused rather than afraid. He even bought a recorder to hide in his pocket, determined to catch whatever cruel thing they might say. He told me with a grin that if my sister tried to flirt with him, he would not only shut her down, but also expose her to the entire family. I was nervous, but I let him go. When he came back, he looked almost excited, his eyes shining as he told me everything. My parents and sister had not only insulted him, calling my judgment poor, but they had made a demand so outrageous that even I could not believe it. They wanted my sister to walk down the aisle at my wedding, in a wedding dress, before me. Their excuse was that since she was older, it was only fair for her to experience it first. They even suggested hosting a cake and pictures as if it were her wedding too. I sat in stunned silence while my husband replayed My husband went back to my parents and told them he had thought about it. He said he believed I would not be happy if I knew, but that he understood how important family was. He pretended to agree with them and acted like he wanted to help. He told them that if they helped pay for the wedding, then I would feel pressure to stay calm and not create a scene in front of everyone. My parents were surprised, but my sister was overjoyed. She actually skipped around the room with excitement like a child. They all agreed to the plan. What they did not know was that my husband had twisted their own words to make it seem like I was controlling and insecure. He told them I never allowed him to write anything down, and that I checked his phone constantly. That way, nothing about their plan was ever put in writing. He used their own lies against them, and they believed every word. From that moment forward, everything was set in motion. My husband and I laughed about it later. We knew exactly what would happen on the wedding day, and the best part was that my parents and my sister thought they had outsmarted us. In reality, they were walking straight into the trap we had created. The wedding day finally arrived. Everything looked perfect, the decorations were beautiful, the guests were happy, and I was filled with excitement to finally marry the man who had stood by me through everything. My parents and my sister arrived early. My sister was wearing a white dress, clearly expecting to carry out the ridiculous plan of walking down the aisle before me. She even had a smug smile, as if she was about to steal the spotlight from my own wedding. But what she did not know was that my husband and I had already arranged everything. We had hired professional security at the entrance of the venue. The moment my sister tried to walk inside dressed as a bride, the guards stepped in. They blocked her path and calmly told her she was not on the list to enter in that way. She argued, shouted, and even tried to push her way in, but the guards did not move an inch. The guests began to notice the scene, whispering among themselves as my sister's tantrum grew louder. My parents rushed to her side, demanding that the guards let her through. But the security team was firm. They explained that the bride and groom had given strict instructions and that no exceptions would be made. I stood inside, listening to the chaos, my heart racing. For the first time in my life, I was not the one being humiliated. I was not the one pushed aside for her. This time, it was my sister who faced the consequences of her behavior. When the ceremony began, she was still outside screaming. The doors were closed, and all attention was on me. For once, it was truly my day, and nothing could take it away from me. The day of the wedding finally arrived. The sun was shining, the air was filled with excitement, and for the first time in my life, I was not walking into a family event as the forgotten child. I was walking in as the bride. My husband and I had spent weeks preparing every detail. The venue was decorated with white roses, soft lights, and elegant designs. Everything looked perfect. But the real beauty of the day was not the flowers or the food. It was the fact that this day was about us and no one else. I got ready in a private suite at the venue. My dress was hanging on the door, a simple but stunning gown with delicate lace that made me feel like royalty. As the makeup artist worked on my face, I kept replaying everything that had led to this day. All the years of being ignored. All the times my sister had tried to humiliate me. All the moments my parents had sided with her. And then I thought about the plan my husband and I had made. The sweet revenge that was about to unfold. Guests started arriving. My cousins, my extended family, and even some old friends were there. They hugged me, took pictures, and told me how beautiful I looked. For once, I felt truly seen. In the middle of all the joy, I heard whispers near the entrance. My parents had arrived with my sister. She was dressed in a white gown, her makeup heavy, her smile smug. She really thought she was going to steal the spotlight by walking down the aisle first. But what she did not know was that my husband had already prepared for this moment. 2 tall security guards were stationed at the entrance. As my parents tried to walk her in, the guards stopped them. My father looked furious, my mother gasped, and my sister screeched as if someone had insulted her royalty. The guards remained calm, but firm. I had given clear instructions. No one would enter unless their name was on the approved guest list. My sister's name was not there. The scene turned dramatic within seconds. My sister stomped her feet and yelled that she was the bride. She pointed at her dress and demanded to be allowed inside. Guests began turning their heads, watching the chaos unfold. My parents begged, trying to push the guards aside, but it was useless. The guards did not move. That was the moment my husband walked up to the entrance. With a calm smile, he said, "Only one bride is marrying today, and her name is not yours." The crowd went silent. My sister's face turned red with rage. My parents looked like they had been slapped. I stood at a distance, watching it all unfold, and for the first time in my life, I felt free. My sister screamed that it was unfair, that she deserved this day, that I was stealing everything from her. But the guests were laughing. Some were shaking their heads in disbelief. The truth was out in the open now. Everyone could see just how spoiled and entitled she was. The guards escorted her away from the entrance as she continued to yell. My parents followed, defeated and embarrassed. They had no choice but to leave with her. The moment they stepped out of sight, the music started and the ceremony began. I walked down the aisle with my head held high. All eyes were on me, not on my sister, not on my parents. For the first time, this was my moment. My husband was waiting at the altar with the biggest smile on his face. When I reached him, I felt an overwhelming rush of relief and happiness. The ceremony was beautiful. We exchanged vows that came straight from the heart. Every word reminded me of how far I had come, from being the forgotten child in my family to finding someone who valued me more than anyone ever had. When we said I do and kissed, the crowd erupted in cheers. The reception was even better. There was music, dancing, laughter, and love. My cousins surrounded me, telling me how proud they were of me. My aunt came up and whispered that I had handled the situation perfectly. Guests were talking about the drama at the entrance, but not in a way that hurt me. Instead, it was all about how ridiculous my sister had acted and how strong I had been. Later that night, I posted a picture from the wedding on social media. It was me and my husband, smiling under the lights, holding hands. The caption was simple. Some people tried to ruin my wedding, but love always wins. The comments poured in. Congratulations, you deserve this. Finally, it is your moment. I knew my parents and sister would see it, and I wanted them to. That night, as my husband and I sat together, I realized something important. Revenge was not just about exposing my sister. It was about finally reclaiming my life. My parents had chosen her over me countless times, but I had chosen myself. And in doing so, I had won. From that day forward, I stopped trying to earn my parents' approval. I stopped letting my sister's bitterness control my life. I focused on my marriage, my career, and my happiness. My sister may have worn a white dress to my wedding, but in the end, I was the real bride, and I was the one who walked away with everything she could never have. Love, respect, and freedom. And that was the sweetest revenge of all.